If I drove past it and it were like that, I wouldn't go, the fence, that's weird. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't think that. But if turning the fence like that would make it so the existing patio doesn't fit, then I, you know, I don't know. I don't know, but if you guys want to maybe think of some words, or if you want to have Patrick think of some words and maybe think about changing the ordinance, and if we can do some research and find out that we would have uh, enough properties where we would need a new ordinance or change, then sure, I'm okay with that.
I don't know. Brandon, you're looking. There's probably 100+ houses in town that are corner lots that have privacy fences that go up to the sidewalk, at least on part of the sidewalk.
Right next to somebody's front yard.
So
They are all over town.
They're what?
They are all over town.
Oh, yeah. So wouldn't this one? Would it cross the sidewalk if you went straight north with the fence? Would it cross the sidewalk?
well, he wouldn't be able to do that, but
The sidewalk is city sidewalk, so it must stop at the property line.
So your sidewalk would not be on the lot itself. So this would be on the lot. The lot is usually a foot inside the sidewalk.
My concern, if we start to rewrite the ordinance and people come in and they want to improve their fence, and now they can't because we changed the ordinance down the road after they've already constructed a fence, we're gonna have people in here every meeting with requesting for variances and saying, well, why can't I change the wood on my fence, or these wood privacy fences don't last forever.
Wouldn't this thing we're thinking about and talking about, isn't it more lenient than what we have on the books right now?
we were talking about adding some stipulations where there would be a line of sight requirement for.
Which we already have.
Not really.
But we talked about not allowing a 6-foot fence on a street frontage that allows driveways. They are all over town
For your
on
second
corner
frontage.
lots.
Okay, so the issue, as I understand it, is if we make no changes, then what this gentleman would like to accomplish is not gonna be able to work. Is that correct? Okay? Not without a variance. Okay, there's never a guarantee on variance, right? Okay, so stepping back and looking at the common good of Brandon, is this something that we need to change, or is this just a unique situation and unfortunately it's not going to work for this homeowner? That's the question. Am I correct? And you are the experts in the deciding of this. Of course, it can always go to city council, of course, but in some form or another, but.
I guess I don't know how we would change that to allow, because that's, so either, I think he can either apply for a variance, asking that we consider the west, the second frontage, and the south, the frontage for fences, or ask for a variance for this situation to be allowed in the front yard setback, but I don't know how we could change our ordinance to allow a fence in the front yard without having a lot of fences in the front yard that we don't want. So, and maybe, and we can't, we're obviously not gonna make any decisions on a variance, but maybe considering this dilemma, maybe that's the hardship, is that it is unique the way it lays out. That could be his argument, but I certainly can't say which way that would go. But I don't know that I would be ready to make a change to the ordinance, but I think the discussion on a variance would be something he could consider.
Is there any strong appetite to change the ordinance? No. Okay. So then our next option is a variance.
Potentially, that would be his option if there's no change to the code. Right now, staff can't approve his building permit. The issue with the variance for him to consider is whether he feels his request creates an unnecessary hardship by the definition of the zoning code. Not necessarily what you or I just commonly would think is a hardship. An unnecessary hardship needs to deprive the owner of the reasonable use of its property. Does not having a fence in a certain location prevent the reasonable use of the property? It's the standard for a variance is high. As we talked about in our meeting, you'll probably want to go back and see how the Board of Adjustment has considered similar fence variances, just to figure out how they operate, whether your particular situation qualifies as a hardship based on how they've acted before. That gives you, hopefully they would act consistently. So that's kind of, do you want the gamble? It requires force, so, and of course there is a cost to the variance. Your cost is paid when you submit your application, just because the cost pays for not necessarily the result you want, but us putting it in the paper and sending out letters and all the stuff that costs the city money. The cost of the variance application is to pay for those things we're obligated by local and state law to do.
So I think it would be appropriate to put this on the agenda next time, just so that there can be any additional discussion that someone might want to make, but we really can't do anything with it tonight, because it was just public comment discussion
Correct.
item, right?
It is on the agenda, but in order to put something to a public hearing, we
Yeah.
would need something to take to a public hearing.
We don't have anything to take to a public hearing, okay.
So your option, of course, is a variance if you feel you can convince 4 out of 6 that it meets the standard of a hardship.
Sorry, as you can see, it's a very complicated process, so appreciate your patience. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to number 11 then.
Our ongoing general definitions discussion. However, it is 8:15. However long tonight, you have the patience to work on it. The main thing I wanted to highlight, we were trying to figure out last time what a front yard was. We presented various examples, and one was that. So the last one is new on here. I think based on what you said last time, this is closer on page 33. It makes sense with the rectangle house on the rectangle yard, but when it comes to something like a Z-lot, is this more what you were thinking? And the definition right now above it is a little clunky that I'm still trying to work through just because it uses the word extending and extends and extending, 3 different times. It is clunky looking, but is that kind of the look and feel of what you're going for? And then, of course, we get into double frontage lot and how do we want to define, as we just saw with the lot we discussed, the primary front yard. Is it the address front yard? Is it something else? The address front yard is easy just because it's a thing you could point at. This is how your address, that's your front yard. Is that necessarily what makes the most sense? I wrote up a draft definition of what a flagpole lot is. Not that in the future we would create any, just because it's a lot with the less than minimum frontage on the street that goes back into having the width, just not on the street. If it doesn't have the street frontage, we wouldn't create the lot now, but we have lots that have come in from the county that are that. And the main thing there would be how we label the setbacks once they're here. And that would be pretty much anything parallel with the street. But, so, just, we have updated a few things, not a ton. Then next we would get into what's a building, what's a structure, what's a principal use, what's an accessory use. So, however much time you wanted to spend on it tonight, I don't blame you. It's 8:15. If you just want to go home, have some dinner, and watch some football, I completely understand. Baseball. Have both on at once. Screen and screen.
Is there anything here that you see you would like adjusted, at least at this point? Or if not, we'll move on to building permits.
The one thing with the secondary and primary front yard it does is a lot of our definitions now say double frontage lot. There are multiple frontage lots. We do have peninsula lots out there that if you wanted to, be that person that, parses every definition, we don't necessarily, you could say address a triple frontage lot if it just says double frontage and corner lots. So it depends on how much you want to be that guy, I guess. But so whether that needs to be addressed or not, I could see where some people would stick to that when it's convenient for them when they come in versus not. And so it's not a huge deal either way, but however we want to be.
If it does have 3 frontages, do both of so you have the front yards, and then are the other 2 treated the same as the second frontage, kind of, with setbacks? Or
Right now, it's somewhat ambiguous. It wouldn't necessarily be addressed, but I imagine in practice we would treat them both as a secondary front yard. This is more or less just acknowledging that in the code. your second and your third front yard would both be secondary front yards. Whereas if it's a double frontage lot, that double implies two.
I guess I do see, you do have your yard, secondary front, the non-addressed front yard of a multi-frontage lot, so
It,
if there's.
from second front to secondary front,
Yeah.
it changes double to multi.
Yeah, I see that.
Or, where it says yard, secondary front, the non-addressed front yard, parentheses with an S, which means it could be one or more.
Correct. It could, yes, it should probably have an S at the end of yard. Or the parentheses S. Yep.
Okay, anything else at the moment that we see?
So on yard's primary front, it says for single-family dwellings, this is typically the front yard the most closely aligns with the orientation of its primary pedestrian entrance. Typically is ambiguous.
The part of the definition doing the heavy lifting is definitely the first sentence, because the second one is typically makes it wishy-washy, but the address front yard of a multi-frontage lot, if we go that way, the address front yard is what defines it. The
Right.
second part is more illustrative for the
Because-
reader.
Because you say typically, and then somebody could come in and say, well, my house isn't typical because the widest part of the house, this part of the house should be the front yard, even though my front door is here.
And I could see a lot where your door isn't at a 90-degree angle. It's at
Yeah,
a 45-degree angle,
Well-
whatever the angle would be, and it then faces out to a corner, and then which one
well, on those,
is the front?
yeah, on those Z lots, that's definitely the case. Yeah,
Well, unless it's a corner lot, it wouldn't matter, you know which one's the front, but I could see a situation where on a Z lot, you could definitely have a,
If you have the door here, which one's the front?
house on, is it Fifth and Cedar? That's like that, the house faces the corner. Yeah. Yeah, so. The census says typically. It-
If that is something that
It makes me think that, oh, typically, oh, well.
it's there to
It's-
connect with the common reader more than probably actually does any work in the definition. So whether it should be there or not, or if it just causes problems, maybe that's, if it just causes problems, even if it's well intentioned, maybe that's what we just get rid of.
I was just looking, that one on, South Sixth and Cedar, the driveway does go out to Sixth, and that's what they call that's the address side, so. I mean, there's still usually, unless because you wouldn't have the driveway go out to the corner, so you'd still have, usually you'd have something that would, but, I mean, you could still have the driveway go out that side, if it was tipped a little bit the other way, you could have the front door facing Cedar, so, yeah, you could run into a coin toss there, coin toss.
Lots of houses where the front door and the garage are at 90-degree angles to one another.
Okay, anything else? Time to wrap this up. Well, I would say if you have some comments, get them to Patrick.
We have the best conversations at 8:30 p.m. on Thursday nights.
You know, I did get you guys a raise for next year because of these long meetings. We're going from 50 to 75. The mayor and I pushed that through. Yeah. So when the public starts criticizing your raise, you can blame it on Harry and I. Yeah, jeez. Anyway, yeah. You guys earn your keep, that's for sure. Anything else right now? Because I'm fading fast. I don't know about the rest of you. And I think there's a couple spouses in the audience that want to go and get something to eat, so I'm going home for a drink. That's all I know. Okay, building permits. Anything there, Paul? You keeping busy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
If you look at multifamily, we're down from 2024, but 2024 multifamily was excessively high for us. So we're still, 93 is still very good for us. The multifamily from last year was the Belco Apartments in Aspen Ridge. That amount at once was a little unique for us. That's why the number looks down, but it's still a very good number.
All right, if there isn't anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And motion second to adjourn, all in favor? All right. Thank you all
We
for
are
your
adjourned
efforts.
at 8:25 p.m.